August 3, 1943. Somewhere in Belarus, a German supply train carries ammunition toward Kursk. The greatest tank battle in history is days away. Every shell matters. The locomotive crosses a section of track that looks perfectly intact. But hidden beneath the railbed, a pressure-activated mine waits. The weight of the engine completes a circuit. The explosion tears the locomotive apart. The cars behind it accordion into each other. Ammunition cooks off for hours. No partisans are ever seen. No shots are fired. The train simply disappears. That same night, across 600 miles of occupied territory, similar scenes repeat. Again, and again, and again. According to Soviet records, up to 42,000 demolitions occurred that first night, though German logs recorded between 4 and 11,000. Whatever the precise number, the scale was unprecedented. This is the story of how the Soviet Union built an invisible army and gave them the tools to bleed the Wehrmacht dry, one rail line at a time. If you're interested in how wars are actually decided by logistics, math, weapons, and doctrine, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for more in-depth World War II analysis. Let's continue. Germany's logistics depended on rail. Approximately 80% of all supplies to the Eastern Front moved by train. The occupied territories contained over 30,000 kilometers of track. Germany couldn't guard it all. By 1942, an estimated 280,000 partisans operated behind German lines. Most had rifles. Some had nothing but rage. The problem was simple. Conventional sabotage was loud, dangerous, and inefficient. A fighter with a grenade could destroy one rail section, and often died doing it. The mathematics were brutal. To cripple a rail line, you needed to cut it in dozens of places simultaneously. Traditional methods made that nearly impossible. Army Group Center relied on just 5 major rail lines to supply over 1 million men. A single supply train carried enough fuel for a panzer division for one day. Early partisan sabotage attempts resulted in catastrophic casualty rates for the attackers, especially on guarded bridges. The solution would come from an unlikely place. A man who had already been erased from Soviet history once and would be erased again. Colonel Ilya Starinov was known among Soviet special operations circles as a pioneer of partisan sabotage. He had fought in Spain. He had trained saboteurs. When Stalin's purges consumed his colleagues, Starinov survived. Some say by luck, some say by being too useful to kill. In 1941, he was recalled from obscurity and given one task: make the partisans lethal. The inventions that emerged transformed the partisan war. The MZD-series pressure mines were compact devices, small enough to fit in a basket, designed to be placed beneath rails. They used simple pressure activation, no wires, no timers. The weight of a locomotive would trigger them, while lighter rail cars often passed safely. Estimates suggest over 150,000 such mines were produced by 1943, though this figure may include various models and variants. Shaped charges, sometimes called Schmel charges in partisan accounts, could cut through rail steel cleanly. A single fighter could carry multiple units, and delayed thermite igniters were designed to melt rail joints silently. A train would pass safely, then the weakened joint would fail kilometers down the line, causing a derailment far from the sabotage site. Simple mechanical tools, lever-operated spike pullers, allowed partisans to loosen rail fastenings without explosives. No blast signature, no evidence until the track shifted under a locomotive's weight. The genius of these designs was accessibility. They required minimal training. Starinov reportedly designed them so that fighters with no technical background could deploy them effectively. These mines weighed roughly 2 kilograms. A grandmother could carry one in a basket of potatoes. A child could place it in under a minute. And it could stop a train carrying hundreds of soldiers. Starinov is credited with designing over 20 sabotage devices. Training programs reportedly brought partisans to basic proficiency within days. But building weapons was only half the problem. Starinov and the Partisan command needed an army of ghosts willing to use them. They found them in the burned villages of Belarus. The recruitment pool was made of survivors, escapees, the ones who had nothing left to lose. Consider Konstantin Zaslonov, a former railway engineer who organized sabotage cells using workers still employed by the Germans. According to Soviet accounts, his network destroyed 93 trains before his death in 1942. German records don't contradict the figure, though such claims from partisan sources often reflected aspirational totals. The Belarusian calculus was written in ash. Over 600 villages were burned with their inhabitants. An estimated 2.2 million Belarusians died during the occupation, roughly 1/4 of the population. Every partisan had a personal ledger of the dead. The transformation was remarkable. Peasants became demolition experts. Women became scouts and saboteurs. Children became couriers, sometimes carrying explosives concealed in milk pails. By 1943, Soviet sources claim over 150,000 trained rail saboteurs operated in Belarus alone. They worked in cells of 5 to 10 people. Cells rarely knew other cells, compartmentalized for security. Female partisans comprised an estimated 16% of sabotage units. The average partisan age was reportedly 23. According to Belarusian veteran accounts and museum records, some saboteurs were as young as 11 years old. The first coordinated test would come in August of 1943. Its codename was simple, Rail War. It would change the entire Eastern Front. The operation was coordinated to support the Battle of Kursk. Between 100,000 and 167,000 partisans, depending on the source, targeted approximately 600 miles of track in a single coordinated strike. Soviet records claim up to 42,000 demolitions in the first 24 hours. German operational logs recorded between 4,100 and 10,900 that first night. The discrepancy reflects the fog of war and the propaganda value both sides placed on the numbers. What's certain is that the scale was massive. The result: German rail capacity to the Kursk sector dropped significantly. Some estimates suggest by 40% overnight. At midnight on August 3rd, Moscow reportedly transmitted a single coded word by radio: begin. Within hours, the German rail network resembled a broken spiderweb. The techniques were devastatingly simple. Partisans cut rails in sequences. Germans would repair Section A, then Section B would detonate. They'd move to B-C was already cut. The repair crews couldn't keep pace. Wandering mines were placed on rail cars, detonating 100 kilometers from the original site. German security forces never knew where the actual saboteur had been. The silence was what terrified German commanders. Most attacks happened without a single shot fired. Guards found the damage only at dawn. Track that had been intact during a midnight inspection, now torn open by mines buried while they walked their rounds. The follow-up strike continued the pressure. Over 19 nights of continuous sabotage, partisans reportedly cut over 90,000 rails in Belarus alone, with combined totals from both operations exceeding 200,000 rail cuts. Over 1,000 trains were derailed. By October 1943, German trains in occupied Soviet territory reportedly moved at an average of 12 to 15 kilometers per hour. Walking pace. The supplies meant for Kursk arrived days late, days that some historians argue cost Germany thousands of tanks. German intelligence reports from the period describe ghost trains, locomotives found derailed with no visible cause. Officers were reportedly advised against rail travel at night. Reward posters offered 10,000 Reichsmarks for information on saboteurs. According to Soviet accounts, no one collected. Operation Concert nearly collapsed before it began. The German informants had reportedly penetrated networks in the Minsk region. But partisan couriers, using forest paths and peasant contacts, managed to smuggle warnings through, preserving operational security. German countermeasures escalated dramatically. Security forces cleared 100-meter death strips along rail lines, cutting down all trees, burning all cover to eliminate hiding spots. Armored trains with machine gun cars patrolled constantly. Forward cars were sometimes filled with rocks or gravel, designed to trigger mines before the locomotive crossed them. The hostage policy was brutal. Reports indicate up to 100 civilians shot for every sabotage incident. Rail patrols walked every 500 meters. Watchtowers went up every kilometer. Why did it fail? The death strips created perfect sightlines for partisans to observe patrol schedules from concealed positions beyond the cleared zone. Armored trains couldn't stop mines already buried under the track before they arrived. Reprisals increased partisan recruitment. Every massacre created new volunteers with nothing left to lose. Patrols spread German forces catastrophically thin. An estimated 30,000 troops were assigned to rail security alone by 1944. Soldiers, not fighting at the front. The irony was bitter. The Germans built watchtowers every kilometer. The partisans simply walked between them. The towers were designed to spot armies. They couldn't see a single woman with a basket. A German internal assessment from 1944 reportedly concluded, despite maximum security measures, a rail interdiction had increased 300% since August 1943. The enemy operated with near-total impunity. Berlin's response only made things worse. Every soldier guarding a railway was a soldier not fighting at the front, and the partisans knew exactly how to exploit that. This was the partisan final exam. In the 5 nights preceding the Soviet offensive, June 19th through the 23rd, partisans reportedly carried out 40,000 demolitions across Army Group Center's supply lines. The result was catastrophic for German logistics. Army Group Center reportedly received only 20% of its expected supplies when the Soviet offensive began. In 12 days, Army Group Center effectively ceased to exist as a fighting force. Approximately 400,000 German soldiers were killed or captured. Yet the rail sabotage contribution cannot be overstated. German reserves couldn't move. Ammunition ran dry. Fuel never arrived. The destruction of the logistics network made the military collapse inevitable. The numbers, compiled from various Soviet and post-war sources, tell a devastating story. Total rail cuts across 1943 to 1944. An estimated 420,000 or more. Trains destroyed or derailed. Approximately 11,000. German personnel killed in rail attacks. Tens of thousands. Estimates range from 30,000 to 40,000, extrapolated from train destruction figures. German troops diverted to security. Over 100,000 at peak deployment. Partisan losses. Unknown with precision. Estimates range from 30,000 to 50,000 rail saboteurs killed. On July 3, 1944, Soviet tanks rolled into Minsk. In the rubble of Gestapo headquarters, partisans reportedly found deportation lists. Hundreds of thousands of names marked for transport to death camps. The trains that would have carried them sat rusting on broken tracks 50 kilometers away. They never arrived. After the war, Ilya Starinov was largely forgotten again. His inventions were classified. His methods were absorbed into Spetsnaz training manuals that would shape Soviet special operations for decades. But his name appeared in few textbooks. He died in 2000 at the age of 99. Much of his memoirs remain unpublished to this day. The partisans dispersed. Some became Soviet heroes, officially recognized, decorated, celebrated. Others faced suspicion. Stalin trusted no one who had operated beyond his direct control. Many simply went home to villages that no longer existed, to families that were ash and memory, and the MZD-series mines were retired in the late 1950s. Variants of the designs reportedly appear in military manuals from Moscow to Beijing. And in Belarus, there is a tradition. On Victory Day, old women still walk to the railway crossings. They leave flowers on the tracks, not for the soldiers, for the ones who carried the explosives, the ghosts who won a war in silence. The Germans kept meticulous records. They documented every train lost, every delay measured, every officer killed. But they never learned the most important number. How many grandmothers? How many children? How many ghosts? That number was never written down. It didn't need to be. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War II historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.